How to live.
So we are pinching ourselves today because we are sitting here with Mia Freedman, the founder of Mamamia, Australia's largest independent women's media group. At age 24, Mia was the youngest editor of Cosmo Australia and went on to become editor-in-chief of Dolly, Cleo and Cosmo before founding Mamamia in 2007. She's also written 4 books, including the bestseller Work-Strife Balance, and is a mother to 3 children. And we actually just met the first of those 3 children.
That's right.
Hello, Mia.
Hello,
welcome.
guys. Welcome. Welcome to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we're actually in your office today, which we're really excited about. We love getting to see where people are working. And the vibe in here is amazing. When we walked in, we said it's very, Silicon Valley-esque. And we did notice that you're just sitting amongst everyone on a desk, and we wanted to ask you about that. What's the theory there?
Yeah, so I... occasionally, there are a few offices and I go on retreat when I need to, but I think because I started my career working in a sort of a small room with about 5 or 6 people at Cleo, and our room was a thoroughfare. The writer's room was between the art department and the fashion department, and it was just, people going past all the time. It was like working in the middle of a freeway. So I work well with people around me and with noise.
Yeah.
But I think that open plan, particularly when you're a writer, can be a little bit of a punish. And I know that not everybody works well in open plan. So I think that, yeah, it can be a really good thing because it's very collaborative. And when I'm at work, I like being with everyone. But sometimes I do need to just withdraw a little bit. Yeah, I need to get stuff done.
Do you have rules? Like you can't go and interrupt someone, or is there like a headphone rule or something like that? Yeah.
We don't have any rules. We should.
We want to implement a headphone rule.
That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
Headphone rule.
That's like a do not disturb sign.
The trouble is that our podcast department have got their headphones on all day, every day. So we would never be able to interrupt them because they're always listening and editing. And I'm the worst offender when it comes to interrupting people.
Yes, same.
Yeah.
And we're actually really bad because we're sisters, we just interrupt each other naturally. And so we've kind of created this bit of a work environment where everyone talks. It's like kind of like a big family, but it's hard to kind of, create that divide and stop that culture of everyone just constantly interrupting each other.
It can be really destructive and really bad for productivity. So what we've just started doing this week is our boardroom, we've dedicated it an hour a day as a library space where people can just go in there and work quietly. And then you've got the sales department like to have a lot of music on, and they like talking because they're on the phone, they're selling. The editorial department have got to work and they've got to have their heads down. Then the tech people have got to concentrate as well because they're coding or whatever. So I don't think that the open plan office is actually a very positive thing for most people. I think it's actually can be quite counterproductive, but it's an effective use of space. I just don't know if it's an effective use of time.
So is that why you guys have it? It was a good use of the space, really?
It was a good use of the
makes
space. We did have offices before, but then it can become a little bit hierarchical as well, and who gets an office and who doesn't. And because the space is limited, we decided to move everyone out of offices and use the offices as meeting rooms.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, it looks good.
Thank you.
It does, and it feels nice. So we'd love to get into it. We can't believe when we were reading about your history. So you were 24 when you were the editor of Cosmo. Incredible. What was that like?
Seems like a long time ago. I thought that was really old because when I started at Cleo as work experience when I was 19, Lisa Wilkinson was my first boss, and she'd become an editor when she was 21. She was the editor of Dolly at 21.
Whoa.
And then the editor of Cleo when she was about 23. So
you felt like you were behind?
Yeah, I did. And so my aim was always to be an editor by the time I was 25, which I thought sounded so far in the future. And when I started at Cosmo, I was the youngest person on the staff, and I probably thought that I knew the most.
Yeah.
And the older I've got, the less I've realised that I know.
Well, that's the thing, that sometimes being young and naive is actually, a positive thing, because you can just go out there, have no fears, and just go for it.
Yeah, I think that's really true. So I didn't really question it at the time. I've learnt a lot through trial and error in terms of managing people and working in a team. I really like working in a team. That's where I'm happiest, in a team of women. But I don't really manage anyone anymore. I don't have any direct reports. I don't really report to anyone. So I've got to the point after almost 12 years of Mamamia where I can sort of carve out my own role.
Yeah, that's great. We're in building a team at the moment, and we're having to manage people, and we're like, this is something completely different that we don't really know if we like, it's just become a completely job probably over the last year since we started hiring people, where we don't get to do the things that we're good at necessarily and the things that we love, because we're helping other people kind of do their things.
That's one of the biggest frustrations, and that's why one of the reasons I left magazines and I wanted to start Mamamia was because I'd worked my way up the ladder and gone from work experience to editor-in-chief of Cosmo, Cleo and Dolly, and I had all this stuff and all this responsibility and great money, and I was so far away from what I loved doing, which was being creative. I was still only in my 30s and I was managing everyone else's creativity, but I wasn't doing anything. And I felt the same way here a couple of years ago. I felt that I was once again in that situation where I'd started at Mamamia, launched this blog, I was writing 6 posts a day, choosing all the images, doing everything myself. And then I'd got to the point which was delightful because I was burning out doing that. It was delightful that we had, 80, 100 staff. But again, I was just managing people and I was in meetings all day, and that is not a good use of me, and it doesn't make me feel happy creatively. So that's when I started Lady Startup as almost a little startup within Mamamia, because Mamamia is not a startup anymore. It's a scale up. You can't have that startup mentality and be hands-on when you've got this many people. You do end up managing the managers.
Totally. So how did you kind of make that transition to go back into doing what you love?
I just started doing it both times. I think when I
love
started,
that answer.
Yeah, I just
it's
did.
too simple.
When you're the boss, you kind of can, but I've always really followed my instincts. And so, at 4 or 5 years ago, I just started a podcast network. Again, I started it as a little startup within Mamamia, and I grew that, and then that got to the point where it was staffed and had lots of people, and I still host 3 podcasts, and I love that. But then I felt that I had more to offer, and I wanted to live our core purpose of making the world a better place for women and girls in a different way. And I felt, it's hard to explain, but sometimes I just feel like I know what this next wave is that's coming.
Yeah.
And I could just tell that, as you guys could, female entrepreneurs were the next, I don't want to say the next big thing as if it's a trend, but the next big cultural shift.
Yeah.
So I knew that was what women were into, and that was delightful to me, because as a magazine editor in the 90s, it was all about supermodels, and then it was all about female celebrities, and the idea that it was about female entrepreneurs and women who were doing things rather than looking a certain way or being actresses or models or pop stars.
Yeah, it was finally about our brains.
It's finally about our brains and our actions. And as a mother of a daughter and sons, and as a female entrepreneur myself, that was pretty exciting.
So, do you want to go?
I was just going to say, so we talked before about how you always seem to be a bit ahead of the trend. So, you were at Cosmo and you really saw that, like, the digital age was coming. You launched your amazing podcast station, what was it, 4 years ago? So you're always, like, ahead of the trend. How do you go about doing that? Is it just, like, something that comes naturally?
Yeah, I have to say, if I have one superpower, that's what it is. I've learned over the years that I've got a lot of weaknesses as a manager, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. But my strength is just being very tapped into what women want a little bit before they know they want it, and really seeing and feeling in myself as a consumer, just observing my own actions and saying, hey, I've started listening to podcasts, or hey, all my friends are starting their own businesses and I've got my own business, and I'm feeling really disconnected from all of those kind of networking groups that are out there. I want some more hands-on support. And starting Lady Startup from that. So it's really just about following my instincts.
And I think the thing is, like, bless you.
Thank you.
It's about being aware of it. Like you're saying, like you started to notice that there are podcasts, and I think we all kind of start to notice that, but nobody really stops to acknowledge it and go, oh, this is the future. Like people often say to us, like, how did you know to get an Instagram then? And it's like, well, if you think about it, a lot of people are on Instagram. People just hadn't stopped to think about it and gone, oh, okay, this is probably where we're all going to be in a few years' time.
Female entrepreneurs do. I mean, with your label, you noticed something. You noticed a gap in the market and a market in the gap. And you thought, well, if we're into it and we can't find what we want, then there are probably a lot of other women who are in that same situation. So, it's really following your instincts in that way.
So when you were at Cosmo still, and you kind of started to notice this digital shift, what did you do there? Like
the first thing I noticed actually at Cosmo was a desire for more authenticity and more diversity in the way women were portrayed, because the magazine industry until that time had just used skinny, white, blonde, tall, young, Anglo models who were size 0, and then they heavily airbrushed them. And I thought, I didn't look like that, and no one I knew looked like that. So why, as a businesswoman, would you want to make your customers feel bad about themselves and unrepresented? And I knew it was bad for business, but I also knew it was bad for women as a feminist. So I started to use women of all different shapes, sizes, and skin colours in every issue of the magazine.
And what year was this, sorry?
This was in 1996.
Yeah, so like how ahead of the trend is that like it's 2018 and we're
know.
still sitting
We're
here
still
being
having
like,
that conversation.
where's all the diversity? Why are all the like models just white and skinny?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like should we put a token plus size girl in this shot? You know, that'll really speak to the people.
And that's what Cosmo was doing before I started. It was like, oh no, we do one plus size shoot a year, and we dress them in cardigans and flat shoes. And I'm like, no, this is Cosmo. We dress them how we dress any other model, and we're not going to do it once a year. We're going to do it every issue, and we're not going to make a big fuss of it and call it modern curves. We're going to just do it as wallpaper. And that meant that Cosmo went to #1 in circulation, ad sales, and revenue. And so again, it's that thing of tapping into walking in her shoes and knowing what women want and going, why is no one answering this? So back to digital, I knew that trying to sell a magazine for $7, $8, and magazines in Australia are among the highest cover prices in the world, but Australian magazines were among the highest sellers in the world per capita. We've got a population that loves to consume information, but when you can, choose your own adventure and make your own entertainment and create essentially your own magazine, this is even before social media, why wouldn't you? And I kept saying to my old white male bosses, the future is coming, the apocalypse is coming for print, particularly when your market is young women. Women also want to have a two-way conversation. They want to dynamically be able to share content and comment on the content. And they just said it was just a phase and a trend and ignored me, so I left.
Yeah,
myself.
That's so interesting. So how did you feel then when Cosmo just recently announced that they're no longer...
I felt it's been about 18 months of seeing first Dolly, then Cleo, now Cosmo. So the 3 magazines that I was in charge of before I left. A tiny part of me felt vindicated, but a bigger part of me felt really angry and disappointed that these incredible brands that I grew up with, that I worked on, that meant so much to me as a reader and as a girl and as a young woman and as a woman, had been allowed by people who didn't know what they were doing to just evaporate, like to just decline and then fall away with no sense of what those brands meant. And it's ironic because if they hadn't, maybe there wouldn't have been a Mamamia. If they'd have been more savvy digitally and they'd listened to me, maybe there wouldn't have been room for us to create our own women's media company. But I still, like every Australian woman, I think, holds such a place in my heart for Dolly.
100%. Dolly Doctor.
Yeah,
exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
And I remember reading your editor's letters when we started Dolly. Like, you were such a big part of that magazine.
So it's devastating, and Lisa's were part of my upbringing too. So I just think, what a waste is what I think.
Yeah, I think that's a bit how we all feel.
Yeah.
I know you say that you saw that digital age kind of coming, but did it feel like a risk when you left kind of these thriving at the time businesses to go out on your own?
That's such a good question. I guess I felt that I had no choice because there's 2 different types of burnout for creative people. There's the burnout there's the burnout for everyone of just being exhausted and working really hard and really long hours. And then there's creative burnout, which is just doing the same thing again and again and again. Mm-hmm. And I had been in the same kind of market with young women, Cleo, Cosmo, for 15 years and making magazines and the hair special and the swimsuit special and the how to know if he's going to break up with you and all of those kinds of things. And as much as I'd been able to push the envelope a little bit around body image, it was still a tired medium to me. So I felt that I literally could not stand doing it for one more month. Like, I'd done more sealed sections than any human should ever have to create.
I love those sealed sections.
Yeah. And I just felt that I kind of had no choice. Mm-hmm. So I'd fought hard to get, I'd had a brief time at Channel 9 and I'd fought hard to get a redundancy. And that meant that I had a little bit of a buffer because I went from earning great money to earning no money. Because this was an 18-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week exercise for 2 years. I couldn't afford to do anything else. And, suddenly I wasn't earning anything. So I had a little bit of a buffer. The redundancy wasn't amazing, but it was enough that I could have a little bit of space to just see if this was going to work or not.
Mm-hmm.
So you just mentioned 2 years. So did it take you 2 years to get Mamamia off the ground?
Oh, God, yes. So in the first 2 years, I don't know, I made a couple of dollars from Google ads maybe, but I didn't earn anything for those 2 years because I couldn't. I mean, I had a newspaper column and I did little bits here and there, but not compared to the salary I had before. And we still had a mortgage to pay, and I had 2 kids and then I had a third. So it wasn't until my husband came on as co-founder about 2 years down the track when I'd built that audience and we were starting to get interest from advertisers, but I didn't have the time or the interest or the skills to do that strategic business side, and he did. So that's when it became a business and, you know, went from blog to business.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, is finding people that kind of balance out your skills.
100%.
Yeah, like you can only do so much, and you know, you've already mentioned like your weaknesses in the 10 minutes that we've been speaking so far, and I feel like that's so important to be able to acknowledge your weaknesses. And so many people put all this pressure on themselves to be good at everything, but none of us can be.
And so often women in business will go into business with someone who is a friend or a relative, and often you are really similar. So you've got the same strengths and the same weaknesses. Sometimes you don't, but and that can be okay, but you've got to be aware of what those weaknesses are, and you've got to either hire against them or outsource against them, because if you're both really great at the creative side, someone's got to be the strategy. Someone's got to be the admin.
Totally. We actually had a similar thing where, like, in the beginning, we were doing everything together, like writing emails together, doing pitches together, everything.
Just so you know, we still share an email address. That's like the one thing that we held on to.
We've held on to it. But and then it wasn't until we kind of started doing, you know, startup programs and speaking to mentors, and they were like, whoa, this is the biggest waste of time. You really need to sit down, you know, write your skills down on paper, have a bit more self-awareness than this, and say, what are you good at? What are you good at? And now we've like become much better at splitting our roles, but it's hard. And it's also in the beginning, I guess you probably want to do everything. Like, you know, you also sound like you want your fingers in all the pies.
And as a business owner and a business founder, as a lady startup, you need to do everything at first, because you need to know how everything works.
Yeah.
Otherwise, someone can come along and go, hey, this is what you need. And you don't know because you've never done that job or you've never understood that part of your business. And that's where you can make really bad decisions and waste a lot of money by not knowing your business inside out.
So we started How to Live as a blog 7 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah, I think
6 or 7 years ago.
I don't know.
And we kind of, you know, we've gotten lost on all these tangents. We like to take on way more than we can possibly handle. The last couple of years for us has been all about tubes, our shoe label. You know, we've put a lot of time and love into that, and it's finally kind of starting to pay off. And we're really ready to relaunch howtolive.com. And, you know, one of the directions we've been taking it in is curating other fashion and accessories by other brands, mainly Australian, which is really cool, and often female-led startups. But, you know, we do really want to bring that website back to its roots and be providing people with really awesome, meaningful, great content. And, you know, you are the expert in this, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on, is it possible in this day and age to start something like that? Or are we beyond that? Are we now just in the social media age and we're all on podcasts and we're moving past the .com?
I think in many ways that is the case. I think that, you know, you talked about you started How to Live 7-8 years ago, around that time, to 2011, 2012, which was the golden age of blogging and people starting sites. And I saw a lot of people do it, and then a lot of people stop doing it because it's hard and it's competitive, and it's expensive in terms of how do you fund that content, because everyone expects the content for free, and creating content costs money in terms of your time, as well as the time of other people that are going to load it and do all this other stuff that you need. So I think there was a real reckoning a few years ago where people just went, hey, I can't, you know, this is a nice hobby, which is great. It's a good, nice hobby, but it's not actually providing me with the kind of income that I need. And it's getting harder and harder to get traffic because everyone's on social media sites. Exactly. How do you compete with Google and Facebook and Instagram? How do you? And
how do you, man?
How do you? That's right. You've got to have such a multifaceted approach. You know, there's search traffic, there's social traffic, there's, for us, there's podcasts, there's video, there's so many different touch points. And SEO and SEM and all of these different things that.
Oh, it sounds exhausting.
I guess I would say to you, why do you want to do the website? Like, what are your motivations? If it's because you find it a great creative outlet, that's great. If there's a business imperative, that's different. If you think, are we going to make a shit ton of money by getting a whole lot of traffic? I mean, it is really, really, really hard to monetize a .com that's newly launched in this day and age. And you see that the people who have launched recently are the huge media companies, because everyone's starting to, a lot of the small companies and the independents are starting to fall by the wayside. I mean, we've even seen in Australia HuffPost has closed down, and others because, Mike in America, MIC has just been sold. Lots of layoffs at lots of digital media companies because there is just so much choice.
Yeah.
So not to be negative about it, but I think you just have to say, why do we want to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess like for us, where we're coming from is like we've got all of these things going on. We're doing like the pop-ups and the podcasts and like creating different content. And we see the website as kind of like it could be a mothership, like somewhere to tie that all together.
And I think that's true. I think that is true. I think that, you look at your website now as your shop window. And what do you put in your shop window? And, maybe people will buy your things via other channels, but if they want to know more about you, I know that I will go to someone's website. I'll click on their Insta bio and I will go to their website. And that's where I get... It's almost like the difference. Being on Instagram is a little bit like wholesaling. You'll have your brand and what you're doing in amongst what everyone else is doing. But your website is like your own pop-up store in terms of media and message. And you can have your whole brand and everything your brand is doing there. Yeah. Now, if the point of it is that, then absolutely 100%. And I think for what you're doing, particularly since you are so multimedia, that makes a lot of sense. If it's, do we want to become a media property in terms of having people come to consume content for the sake of content about all different things, that's really tough. But if you want it to be like a shop window and a home base, absolutely.
I love what you said there. I'm just going to repeat that, where you said your Instagram is like your wholesaling from and your website is like your pop-up shop. I think that's a really cool way to look at it.
Yeah. You think of, flicking through Instagram and I'll see your stuff and I'll see something from the Spell Girls and I'll see something else and I'll see something else and I'll see something else. It's like wandering through a really great boutique and you see all different labels. But if you want to control, the thing is with Facebook and Instagram is that everything looks the same. Your stuff, because of the way it's packaged and the way Instagram and Facebook makes every news organization, every label look essentially the same. And it's only on your website that you'll be able to really express your own brand signature in that way.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that, we look at, there's so much out there on the internet now, and so much of it is negative, and so much just kind of, clogs up your news feed and brings you down. And that's another reason that we really want to start our own thing, is because we want to put positive content out there. Like you said, like there's still this need for diversity, and it's not getting out there as much. And like I think I find personally, like I'll scroll through Instagram or be going on websites, and I had to block news websites from my phone because it was just leaving me so depressed. And
so it's like leaves you with an anxiety hangover.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think women more and more have got this kind of news fatigue, are getting a sort of a news fatigue. We're about to launch a new podcast called The Quickie that is about news but in a female way, because the way news is usually packaged is very much by men for men, in that way that's just very, if it bleeds, it leads, and it's kind of fear-based and anxiety-based and conflict-based.
And leaving all us women with huge anxiety from it.
Because women consume news in a different way to men. Women feel news in a different way to men. Whereas you can show a man a piece of information and go, oh, yeah, but a woman will be like, oh.
Yeah, that's so right.
And you'll
really
take away.
Feel it. Yeah.
So, all of that I think is right. Do you need to be creating content every day or 3 times a week on your website? Absolutely not. People will I think that would be a waste of time, and I think the time for that is over now. But as a home base, hell yeah.
So speaking of the time for that is over, is there something that you've seen that you're like, okay, like in 5 years, it's going to look like this, or I feel like this is about to take off the way you did with podcasting 4 years ago?
I think that the idea of the female entrepreneur is more and more important in terms of people turning away from news, wanting to support brands that that share their values. I think that's really important. And also people wanting to know more about the brands they're supporting. I think that's becoming really important.
Yeah, that's so true about values. I feel like even I would say 2 or 3 years ago, Stephanie and I, we stand for a lot, female empowerment and animal welfare. But even 3 years ago, we felt like we weren't really able to voice those opinions without alienating people, which is obviously not what we want to do. But now it's so cool that we live in this time where everyone is so value-based, and if you don't stand for anything, then why are you even here, which is really cool. And it seems like something you've been able to thread through your business really well.
Like, we've seen that you've done the 1,000 Girls project.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, so for us, it's always been about coming back to what's our core purpose. And I guess that gives us a big point of difference from all our other competitors who are all saying, oh, women, let's make content for women and let's grab the pink dollar. For us, it's always been about making the world a better place for women and girls. And that's not to say that we're a charity, but we do that through content, and we do that through our partnerships with charities that support women. So, for example, Share the Dignity, who we partner with and who I'm an ambassador for, that's a charity that was started by a woman called Rochelle Courtney after she read a story on Mamamia about period poverty and how some women have to use newspaper and socks because they can't afford sanitary items. And she started Share the Dignity after reading that article. And Room to Read is another charity that we partner with, and everything, every $1 from every ticket that we sell, every book that we sell, everything for our live shows goes to support helping to keep girls in school in some of the most underprivileged countries in the world, and our live podcast that we did in country areas for Drought Angels to help support, with the rural community. So for us, it's about, and now with Lady Startup as well, I want to try to help 20,000 women by 2020 to launch or grow their own businesses. And that's a sort of a concrete goal.
That's really cool. And we were actually very lucky to be a part of your Lady Startup book. Thank you so much.
You weren't lucky. You were very deserving.
Oh, we feel lucky.
We feel very lucky.
No, I'm a big fan of what you do, and I'm really impressed. So we wanted to showcase, we've got 56 different women who sort of take you behind the scenes, including you guys. We're generous enough to share some of your business story. And that's what women kind of want to read and learn about.
Totally. And I love what you said there. You want to make the world a better place for women and girls, but you're doing it in not like a serious, boring way. It's like you want to impact the world positively, and it doesn't have to be drab and really, dry and sad. It's actually like we're creating fun content that you want to be a part of. And actually, you didn't even notice, but we impacted you positively as well. It's almost like a trick.
Correct. And I think there's a lot of judgment in what is quality content or what is good content. I think that you can make the world a better place for women and girls by making them laugh, by making them feel seen or heard or understood, or giving them a platform to tell their story as a survivor or just as someone who something funny's happened to. So entertaining and informing women is another way to make the world a better place for women and girls.
So I think it's really cool that you've got all these things that you're incredibly passionate about, and you do bring them into your business, like Room to Read, like Lady Startups. Was there a point in your business when you introduced those kind of passions into it, or was it there from the beginning? Because we actually, we do have a lot of things we're passionate about, and we recently started Too Good, which is an initiative where we give a female entrepreneur a grant of up to $5,000 and a mentorship from us. And we were telling Christina Carlson, who we sat down with recently, the founder of KKK, and she was like, that's really awesome. But she said to us, I was given the advice once that you need to feed yourself before you can feed others. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's true too. I mean, for us, we have always had that as our North Star, our core purpose. But I think we probably weren't very good at surfacing that, both within the company and outside the company. My husband and I have always sort of done it behind the scenes. But I think that, when you look at the culture of the organisation you want to make and the difference that you want to make in the world, I think that by saying what you stand for attracts people who are like-minded to you. So, and as far as putting your own oxygen mask on before putting it on other people, I think that's true as well. I think that though women, the networking effect of women supporting women should never be underestimated, because I think that I think the only thing that a woman likes more than being helpful is being seen to be helpful. And I think that that's just win-win, because when we help each other, it's positive for the person being helped, and it's also positive for the person helping, because I think that along with every mentor relationship and mentee relationship I've ever had, it should be a two-way exchange. Like, you do learn stuff from the person you're mentoring, as well as the person who mentors you.
Definitely. And so we have talked a little bit about Lady Startups, but I realized we didn't actually delve into what that is. So I'd love you to tell our listeners a little bit more about that and what you guys are doing.
So I just started as an Instagram page, really. I'd started this Instagram account. I snuck over to our art department and got them to design a logo. And my husband at one point, noticing me spending more and more time on this, was like, what is it? Like, what's the business model? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I'm figuring it out. I'll get there. And so we really listened to the community. We discovered that, as you would know, one of the hardest things about starting your own business is feeling isolated. And so many women dream of working for themselves, either so that they can have more meaning to what they're doing, so that they can control their work hours and have that flexibility and control over their working lives, and to make a difference, and also as a creative outlet. So we now run courses for people who've got an idea and want to turn it into a business, online courses. We have got a podcast. We've got the book. And next year we're also going to be launching in 2019 the Rocket Club, which is going to be for women who've already got their own businesses but who want to grow them and who really want to sort of put a rocket up their businesses.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because there's sort of quite a few organisations, and the more the merrier, I say, but that are focused on kind of corporate women and sort of getting women to the top in boardrooms, which is great. And please, we need more of that.
Yeah, that. What's that stat? Like, there are more Toms on boards in Australia than there are women. It's
Absolutely.
Not Tom, though. It's another name.
It could be Tom, could be David,
Matthew,
could be Andrew, all of them. But for women, the women I talk to, the women who are running their own businesses, they just want sort of practical grassroots help and support. And for us, we've now got this platform of millions of women. We're the biggest media company for women in Australia, run by women. And so, of course, we want to lift other women up. And what I find is that it's not just the women who are running their own businesses who are benefiting from Lady Startup, but other women who might not run their own businesses, but if they get to choose, I'm going to buy a pair of shoes, at Zara or made by two female Australian entrepreneurs, I'll pick the girls. Like,
totally.
I'll vote with my wallet, and I will actually support a woman, or whether it's hiring a tradesperson or getting a graphic designer or getting a caterer. It was just my daughter's 13th birthday and bat mitzvah, and we had a party for her. And
Mazel tov.
Thank you. And I chose a female event planner, and when we were making decisions about caterer and DJ and all of those things, I said, I want a woman, I want a woman, I want a woman, I want a lady startup. So we had a full team, including even the rabbi, who were all women.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so great.
And that's just a practical way that you can actually support other women, and that's me walking my talk, I guess, which is something that's just so important to us here.
That's really cool, because we've talked about doing that in our business and really encouraging our suppliers as well to always be choosing things that align with our values and their values. But exactly. I've never even thought about doing that in my personal life as well, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if ever we can choose, to hire a tradesman or whatever it is, tradesman, look what I just said, tradesperson, whatever, we'll always try to choose a woman, because what better way to literally empower other women than helping them in their businesses.
That's so cool. Love that. So podcasts.
Yeah.
Are they going to be around for a long time?
Oh, in a bigger way. Yeah, bigger way than ever. So now is the age that blogs were when you started them, like when you started yours. So in 2011 and 2012, everyone was starting a blog. Now everyone's starting a podcast.
That's how we feel as well, but we feel like we might have gotten in at just the right time in Australia.
Yeah, possibly, absolutely, and I think that it's we say to brands, it's got to be part of your strategy now. As far as everyone starting their own, that's tough, because again, if you don't have that foothold, but again, it depends what your podcast is for. If it's just a different way to get your message out, fantastic. More and more content is being consumed by women through audio, and because there's a limit to the time we can look at our screens, but there's much less of a limit to the time that we can absorb information through our ears.
Totally. Well, and I also feel like it's quite cool, because if I'm listening to it, I almost want it to be I want to get something positive out of it or learn from it, much more so than when I'm just like scrolling on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very aware of like, okay, if I'm going to sit down and listen to a podcast, it's not going to be mindless. I'm actually going to learn something. I'm going to feel better after I do it. Yeah, something like that.
Absolutely. And, there's an intimacy to podcasts. So for us, we've got 21 different podcasts. We've got about 4 or 5 of them that are regular weekly shows. Others are seasonal. Everything from wedding podcasts to sex podcasts to lady startup. It's a medium that I'm really, really enjoying. If you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, what do? I would have probably said I'm a journalist or a writer. Now I consider the creative side of myself very much to be a podcaster, and I don't write anymore except for my newsletter.
That's so cool. I didn't realize that.
I don't write anymore, so I express myself through podcasts.
That's very cool. And I think that, we can say, oh, it feels like it's so saturated right now. Everyone's starting a podcast. But I think still in 2 years' time, everyone's going to be like, how did you know to start a podcast then?
Yeah.
Like you just kind of have to really, like you said before, you have to listen, have your eyes open, and what is happening. It's never too late to get on it. We know people that are like, oh, I was going to, but it feels like everyone's doing it. In 2 years, everyone is literally going to be doing it.
And if you feel that it's how you want to express yourself, then that's what you need to do. Like it's the same with starting a blog. If you think you're going to get rich doing it, you won't. But if you are doing it for other reasons, for reasons around branding, for reasons around creativity and expressing yourself and starting a conversation and putting something good into the world, well, then absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Awesome. Okay, well, this was so amazing, Mia. I'm so excited about this podcast. I can't wait for it to go live.
And I feel like we could literally sit here for hours with you, but we know your time is precious, so we won't keep you much longer.
You're good interviewers.
So, thank you.
Big compliment.
We're learning. So before we go, we'd love to ask you some quick fires.
Yes.
So I'll hit you with the first one. What's the last thing you do before you go to bed at night?
The last thing I do is usually plug in my phone.
Is it next to you or is it in another room?
It's next to me, but I put it on airplane mode.
Same.
I'm a really good sleeper. I'm like an Olympic sleeper. I could win medals for my sleeping. So I look at my screen until the second I want to go to sleep, and then I turn it off and I'm asleep in 30 seconds.
Oh, that's such a talent.
Yeah,
that's a great talent.
It is a great talent.
So you said you had one superpower before, which was seeing the future, but that's your other
also
superpower.
Sleeping. I can sleep everywhere.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Like even
I can
on
sleep
buses?
right now.
Oh, anywhere. I can't not sleep on a plane anymore. Even if it's just down to Canberra, I'm asleep practically on the runway.
Oh, that's so
I know,
great.
it's weird.
That's amazing. Okay, number 2 is, what is your biggest guilty pleasure? Or not guilty. You don't have to feel guilty for it. Just a pleasure, really.
Oh, look, I like to eat in bed. And I don't feel guilty about it, but my husband...
What about the crumbs?
Well, I don't care. My husband hates it, so I only can really do it when he's away or he's out because he refuses to allow me to eat in bed. I like to eat in bed.
Yeah, I like to eat. I didn't even know that was a guilty thing. Like,
it is when you live with someone and share a bed with someone who finds it abhorrent.
I do, but yeah.
I really like to eat in the bath. I've started this new thing where if I'm going to have a bath, I'm like, well, it may as well be the most indulgent thing ever. So I take a piece of cake to my bath.
Oh, I love that. I do a cookie in a bath as well.
It's really fun.
I also walk around Westfield. That's kind of my happy place when I need time on my own.
Really?
I walk around Westfield listening to podcasts.
Okay. That's really... Why Westfield?
Just, I like all the things to look at, the stimulation, or I'll walk around Sephora for a couple of hours.
Okay. A female entrepreneur you admire?
I asked Poppy King to write the foreword to my book because when I started Mamamia, she literally was the only female entrepreneur that I could even think of that existed. She sort of
a lipstick queen.
Yeah, she was something ridiculous like 19 when she started her lipstick range. And, you know, everyone's got a million lipsticks now, but back in the 90s, the early 90s, the only people that had made lipstick were like Revlon and Estee Lauder. And who was this 19-year-old girl from Melbourne who thought she could make lipsticks? And it's such, for women of a certain age, probably over the age of about 35 or 40, we all wore the, you know, you'd be in the club and you'd be...
In the red Poppy King.
Yeah, you'd be putting your lipstick on in the mirror in the bathrooms and everyone did it. And that was monumental. And she had she flew like a comet through the female entrepreneur business landscape, had a falling out with her backers, ended up going to the States and has worked for Lauder for a while and then has continued to She's just got such an entrepreneurial spirit, and she's about to do some more things, and she's coming out to Australia next year to do a bit of a tour with me.
Oh, cool. We can't wait to see.
Yeah, she's amazing.
We're going to
Fun
say the
fact
same thing.
about Poppy King, she actually used to date our uncle.
She did. I remember her when we were
go.
really little, and I just
Same.
thought she was the coolest.
I was so thrilled that she agreed to write the foreword to the Lady Startup book, and I've just reconnected with her after about 20 years, and she's just as inspiring as ever.
Oh, cool. Well, we've just got our copies of the book, so can't wait to read that forward and the book in general. Who is your celebrity hall pass?
My celebrity hall pass?
Yeah.
I'm going to say Sam Page from The Bold Type.
Oh,
You guys watch The Bold
I
Type?
love that you just referenced the bold type.
Wait,
That is amazing.
is that Richard?
I love Richard.
Oh, Richard's amazing.
Richard and Son together
Yeah.
is my life.
He's
Oh
a
my
great
God,
one.
He is amazing. Once upon a time, I would have said Rob Lowe, but since
Oh, yeah.
watching The Bold Type, he is just...
And his character is beautiful. Like,
I
I don't
agree
even
with you.
know if mine's Sam or maybe it's Richard.
Yeah,
You know
like,
what?
he's
Yeah, no, I
amazing.
agree. He's like Mr. Big. He's like the Mr. Big of The Bold Type.
He's
from Sex and
amazing.
the
You know,
City.
it's so funny that you brought up the bold type because we were just saying we should start a side podcast where we discuss our favourite shows, and our two were the bold type and Younger.
Yeah, I
Obsessed.
know. We've got that in here. It's called the Recap Podcast, and we're doing a summer special on The Bold Type, which I'm going to be in.
Oh.
Because all I want to do is talk about that show.
Oh, we
Cool,
can't
okay,
wait.
we'll have to listen.
Yeah, we'll be listening for sure.
And the last question is your favorite cuisine in the world.
Pizza.
Oh,
It
yeah.
has to be pizza.
Steph,
Or
Not
he's
even
going-
Italian. I love that it's just
yeah.
pizza.
Oh, yeah, pizza or any kind of bread. I mean, if I can, I judge a restaurant on the kind of bread, the quality of bread that they have.
Mm.
And there's a type of bread, there's a bakery in Sydney called Iggy's, and they do like this particular sourdough. And on the weekends, there's like queues down the street.
I'm literally writing that down as we speak.
Iggy's bread or
Polanen.
any kind of wood-fired pizza.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I'm having a real pizza moment at
That's
the
what I was
moment.
about to say. Stephanie's obsessed with pizza at the
I
moment.
know I can't. There's this eggplant pizza from Baby
Yep.
in Melbourne.
Oh,
I'm
I
just
ate that. I know that eggplant pizza.
It's
Maybe that's the one
so
I have
good.
whenever I go there.
It's
with a
really
good
good.
Aperol
Yeah.
spritz.
Yes.
Amazing.
So whenever I'm in Melbourne, I meet my girlfriend Wendy, who lives in Melbourne now, and we meet at Baby, and I have the eggplant pizza.
Amazing. Well,
And
our
Prosecco.
office is literally just down the road from there, so
Shut
we'll have to
up.
have a
It's
pizza
my
and a
favourite
drink
place
one
to
time.
eat.
It is. It's very good. We go there sometimes on Friday afternoons. They do $5 Aperol spritzes. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And also, you have to try South Dowling sandwiches because they have this delicious squishy bread, and it's just 5 minutes down the road from here.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Anything that with good bread, I'm there.
Okay, amazing. Well, Mia, thank you so much. You've
Thank
given us
you.
so much to think about. I feel like we want to go down and write what we think is going to be in the future, and then we can compare notes in 5 years.
I know, and I think we're ready to like redo our whole business plan after speaking to you as well. So that'll be another episode.
Put that on your to-do list.
Yeah, but thank you so much again. It was great to chat to
Thanks
you.
for having me, and I can't wait to hear the whole podcast series. It's going to be fantastic.
Thank you.